There's a moment in every controversy where the actual facts seem to disappear. A clip will circulate, or a headline will form, or a label just sticks. And recently, following comments connected to Tourette's and the subsequent reaction around the BAFTAs, John Davidson, it's been described in some quarters as racist. And that's a serious accusation. So today, I wanted to slow the whole situation down, not to defend anyone and not to dismiss offence, but to examine what happens when outrage moves faster than context. Because if we're going to use words like racist, they need to mean something. So Tourette syndrome is a neurological condition characterised by more well-known motor tics, vocal tics, and in some cases, involuntary vocalizations. Now, a small percentage of those people with Tourette's experience coprolalia, which is involuntary swearing or socially inappropriate words. And that's not a moral choice. They're not making a political statement, and it's not a reflection of belief. It's neurological. It's proven to be neurological. And here's the important nuance. Tourette's doesn't mean anything offensive said can be excused. But it also doesn't mean if a word is said, it reveals someone's ideology or morality, because intent matters, context matters, neurology matters. Reducing Tourette's to he said that word, therefore he is that thing, is medically simplistic and socially dangerous. Now, we all know the BAFTAs, especially in the UK, and it's kind of a cultural institution. They represent brand values, they make decisions about representation, and they obviously curate the image they want to project. And they can do that. They're allowed to do that. That's fine. But what often happens in moments like this is something completely different. A controversy emerges, public pressure builds, and then institutions react quickly, and you get a solid narrative that is along the lines of, in this case, this person is racist. And that label travels far faster than any careful investigation of the context can. And once that word's attached to someone, it doesn't attach itself easily. But racism isn't simply saying a prohibited word, being controversial, being politically incorrect. Racism, as you know, is a pattern of belief, intent, and behaviour that is intended to dehumanise or decharacterise someone. And that's not the same. I do want to add something as an addendum to this video, in that I think the behaviour of the BBC in this situation was questionable. Now, by all accounts, although I've seen the clip, I didn't watch the show, but by all accounts, they edited out one of the recipients or attendees shouting out about Free Palestine, but they didn't edit out this racial slur. Now, that editing out doesn't mean it didn't happen, doesn't take away from the offence, the distress, the upset that particular word would have caused, even though John Davidson wouldn't have intended to do it intentionally. And as I said, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo handled themselves with utmost dignity. It was inspiring to see. But the BBC have reportedly said that it was an editing mistake or an oversight. Or maybe someone left it in on purpose because they knew it would cause a massive shitstorm. I don't know. I struggle to believe that it was a mistake. They could have easily edited that out, and then yes, it would have made headlines, and yes, it would have been talked about on social media, but it wouldn't have been there wouldn't have been an audible clip to further beat the gentleman with and further draw attention to unfortunate doesn't even seem the right word, but I can't think of another one in this context, an unfortunate situation all round. Even though I know Alan Cummings had given a heads up about he was there and he suffers from Tourette's, and for those that didn't know, it's a disease that characterises itself like this, and this may happen, and please be understanding, all that stuff. I don't buy that the BBC, it was sloppy editing and they dismissed it. I struggle to find a reason to believe they didn't leave it in on purpose. And I don't want to rally on the, rail on the BBC, but they're not the bastion of journalism and reporting that they used to be. When I was growing up, people would look to the BBC from other countries in the world on how to do journalism, how to present journalism, how the media should conduct itself. Nobody does that now. It's a laughing stock and an absolute albatross around the UK's neck. And part of it is a shame, because all that history and that well-earned positive notoriety has kind of been lost, because they were amazing world leaders once upon a time, and that's all been lost because of the appalling, abhorrent choices that they've made, whether it goes to Jimmy Savile and God knows what else, and all of those things, and the decisions that were made, to Hugh Edwards, and that's, you know, that's not media. It is media as such, but that's people's abhorrent personal proclivities. To this, where it's like you edited that out, but you didn't edit this out. That scene and that word is going to be communicatively more offensive and understood in its power than the Free Palestine statement. That's a political, personal ideology. I don't buy that they accidentally missed it because it was pre-recorded. They could have edited that out. I think that's nonsense. Anyway, that's by the by. When we collapse everything into the most severe label available, a number of things can happen. One, we lose precision. Two, we undermine genuine anti-racism work. And three, we turn a public debate into moral theatre. And there's a difference between a tasteless joke, a neurological vocalization, and an ideological commitment to racial hierarchy. If we stop distinguishing between those, we don't become more just, we become less accurate. And in this situation, accuracy matters. Now, part of what fuels reactions like this is wider anxiety. There's already tension around, comedy and changing norms in some circles, or what counts as acceptable humour, or institutional signalling, or cancelling cultural narratives in whatever situation. So one incident becomes symbolic of something bigger. But in every controversy, not every controversy is culturally changing. Sometimes it's simply poor phrasing, poor timing, poor understanding, and it's definitely amplified by social media, because outrage thrives on simplification. Fairness requires detail. Now, it is possible to say and write, words can hurt, context matters. It's also possible to say institutions can make choices and labels should be used carefully. And none of that is taken away from the fact that I don't understand how it feels to be called this hateful word. I will never understand it. I only know it's a word that I have been brought up to know is totally inappropriate and should never be said in any circumstance ever. I'm one of those really, I was going to say ridiculous people, but I don't even know if it is ridiculous. If I'm, singing a rap song, rapping along with a rap song, I should say, I'll skip that word. I won't even say it in a song. It's just one of those things that just innately in your spirit, you do not feel comfortable with, because you know it's wrong in any circumstance. Makes me flinch. I love North and South, the miniseries about the Civil War, Patrick Swayze. I've watched it numerous times. Absolutely love it. Makes me cringe. Not because I'm trying to avoid representation of what happened in history. It's just, it's so unpleasant to try and even get a percent of what other fellow humans were exposed to. You just can't wrap your head around it, apart from feel uncomfortable, which you're supposed to. We should feel uncomfortable. But to call John Davidson racist, I don't work in neuroscience. I'm a vascular nurse by background, and I work in infection control. But over my experience in various specialities, I've come across patients and cared for patients with Tourette's. And they all have a varying display of certain symptoms. Billie Eilish has famously got Tourette's, and she has more the physical tics that occur in certain stressful situations. So it differs wildly. I just think it's grossly unfair and ignorant to all of a sudden say he's racist. When you break it down, he waited his entire life and has been doing loads of awareness about Tourette's for a long time. This film is like the pinnacle of his contribution to that work, because the film is based on his life. But he's done numerous documentaries and spent a long time trying to raise awareness and understanding about Tourette's. But you're basically saying he waited his entire life to be in a public setting where the chances were he knew there'd be two black people presenting, and used that moment to unleash his racial characteristics. Really? That doesn't even make sense when you say it out loud. It was unfortunate, and people have said, well, he picked the worst word that he could say when, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who handled it with absolute dignity beyond reproach. Their professionalism and their humanity and their dignity was just amazing to see. It's like he didn't... People with Tourette's will say the most offensive thing that they can think of in that circumstance. That's the way the disease presents itself. So of course that's what he was going to say, if he was going to say anything at all. It's not that he waited for that moment, and that is part of his character, and that is part of his personality, and that's part of his ideology. Tourette's means you are going to say the worst possible thing about that situation that you can say in that situation, because the anxiety gets so much you're like, and blurt it out. And of course that's what happened. Of course that's what happened. So it's possible to criticize someone's behavior, but you don't have to declare them morally irredeemable. And it's possible to acknowledge that Tourette's is ridiculously complex without turning it into a shield or a weapon. And that's kind of, I hope, what maturity looks like in public discourse. And certainly over the last few days, the traction this situation's been getting. Because if we're going to accuse someone of racism, that accusation needs to be grounded in clear evidence of belief and intent. Surely it does. Not simply the presence of a word. It's a conversation I can't even believe we still have in the 21st century. Because if everything becomes racist, nothing's being properly understood. Outrage is really quick, and then precision is slower. And precision is usually hiding in plain sight.